Hello, and welcome to another episode of Who Has Time for This, a podcast where we delve into complex issues through the lens of our own unique perspectives. Today we have a Halloween treat for everybody. Katie is going to talk us through horror culture and media, movies specifically.
Yes.
And I will hand it right off to her.
All right. Hello, hello. The Halloween season is upon us. So I wanted to do a little dive into sort of a history of horror movies, how they represent us, and how they represent our societal and collective fears. So let's jump in.
Jump right in.
Okay. As Wes Craven once said, horror films don't create fear, they release it. When we watch horror movies at home or in the movie theater, we get to experience the adrenaline rush of fear, but from a place of safety. We experience the terrifying events on screen with a sense of control. This sense of safety and control makes horror movies the perfect outlet to process our deepest societal anxieties, moral panics, and cultural fears. Michelle Martinez, who is a professor of film and media studies at Arizona State University, said this: "Horror films tend to have their finger on the pulse of what society is fearful or anxious about at the time they're made. Moral and social panics often show up in horror films as monsters or as metaphors. Sometimes horror films push against cultural norms or even serve as a cautionary tale regarding difficult situations, be they emotional or societal." So horror often gets a bad rap of being just like cheap jump scares or gratuitous violence. It's always overlooked come award season.
That's
and
true.
Yeah, and it often doesn't receive any of the praise it deserves from critics. And sure, there are plenty of horror flops out there, but I'd argue that horror is a genre that allows for more daring and more risk-taking than others. And often those things that exist out of the norm and the expectation of society are not as well received within that society. There are many poignant, well-made, and award-worthy horror movies out there, and they have a lot to say. So today I'm going to walk through a bit of a history of horror movies specifically, and how they not only represent what our collective society fears, but how they also represent or misrepresent us as people. So spoiler warning for lots and lots of horror movies from the 1920s, actually from 1915 to today.
Wow. So that's like the beginning of movies,
Yeah.
basically. Well, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So horror movies have been around since the beginning of film, basically?
In a way, yeah.
Okay.
There's one movie, so most of the movies I talk about start in the 20s, but there's one movie that is, it's a horror in some ways.
Okay.
In cultural ways.
Great.
But before we get to the movies, I want to talk a little bit about some of the first writers of horror literature. Horror has historically been well received and revered by outsiders who see themselves in the monsters that it depicts. I want to discuss how the very genre of horror itself has been created by these outsiders and the people who don't fit in with the status quo since its beginnings. Before we get to the fathers of horror, we have to talk about Mother. Our goth queen who lost her virginity on her mother's grave. And the absolute legend of a woman who burned herself grabbing her late husband's heart from his ashen remains that were still smoking, and she kept his heart wrapped in a poem in her drawer until her death. I'm talking about Mary Shelley, of course.
Okay. Listeners, I read through this outline last night, and I thought that was... I did not know what we were talking about. I had no idea. And then she was like, Mary Shelley. And I was like, oh.
Yeah.
I did not know any of that.
None of us are as goth as Mary Shelley. We can try. But Mary Shelley published her gothic horror novel Frankenstein, or The Modern Prometheus, in 1818. And she came up with the tale in 1816, when she and her husband, Percy Shelley, and her friend Claire Claremont visited Claire's lover, who was none other than Lord Byron. So 1816 is known as the year without a summer, because severe climate abnormalities caused global temperatures to drop by almost 1 degree Fahrenheit. It's thought to be the result of a massive volcanic eruption that happened in where modern-day Indonesia is the year before. So the temperature change caused, crop failures and food shortages in the northern hemisphere, and it resulted in the coldest summer in Europe on record from between 1766 to 2000. So anyway, Mary Shelley and her posse were stuck indoors. And to pass the time, all that to say, they were inside and they were bored.
and probably a little bit freaked out.
Yeah. So they challenged each other to write the scariest ghost story they could think of, and obviously Mary Shelley won. I'm mentioning Mary Shelley for a couple of reasons. One is she's a woman. And women in the 1800s didn't often get to publish widely loved, well-received novels. She was a woman who had great privilege, but she was a woman nonetheless. And two, Lord Byron's whole little clan is very widely thought to have been very sort of polyamorous, sexually fluid group. I think, Percy Shelley was in love with him. I don't know. It seems very messy.
Yeah.
But anyway, the
Sounds
third...
like they had fun.
Yeah, right? Writing ghost stories and then just getting into it.
Yeah.
And the third reason is that Mary Shelley specifically is believed to have been bisexual. After Percy Shelley, her husband's death, she wrote letters saying that she got tousy-mousy with other women, and literally tousy-mousy was slang for the vagina. So, it's pretty clear. So even going back all the way to our gothic mommy, horror has been written by people on the fringes, people who are other in some way or another.
Stupid question. Just because I forget. Did she publish Frankenstein under her own name or
believe so.
Under a different name? Okay. I don't remember.
I don't ever remember her hearing about it being under a different
pen name.
I feel like
because she's a woman, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like she was rich enough probably
that she could
it was
just,
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I'll look
put
it up,
something in the show notes.
And if she did, I don't know.
I feel like we would know that if she did.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. Sorry that I asked. I could have asked earlier.
That's okay. That's okay. But we can't have a discussion about our horror mommy without horror daddy. Edgar Allan Poe. He was one of the first authors in the U.S. to write short stories. And he's generally considered to be the creator of the detective fiction genre. But the stories of Poe's that, usually come to mind for people are his tales of the macabre, like The Telltale Heart, Cask of Amontillado, The Pit and the Pendulum. There's just so many. And throughout his life, which wasn't an easy life, Poe experienced bouts of depression, and he's widely thought to have suffered from bipolar disorder. It has also been suggested that he struggled with drug addiction, but this has not been proven, so we don't know if that's true or not. But could his macabre writing have been a way to process his difficult moods and his difficult life situations? Again, we see these macabre tales being spun by the people who have difficulty fitting into the rules and expectations of a limiting and constraining society.
Yep.
Next is an interesting one. I want to talk about Bram Stoker, who wrote Dracula in 1897. Stoker, as a boy, he suffered from an unknown illness that kept him bedridden until he was 7 or 8. He was brought up in a Protestant church of Ireland, but he had very liberal views himself. These things could definitely contribute to him feeling like an outsider in his own community, and when you look at the novel Dracula, you see some of the running themes of the book are the need to repress desire and sexuality, which goes hand in hand with, the religious upbringing of his community. And when you pair those very present themes with some of the fan letters that young Bram Stoker wrote to Walt Whitman, many scholars believe that Dracula is a lot of ways about Stoker's own repression of his own sexual identity. The letters are they're very stream of consciousness, they're very personal, they're very revealing, and I'm going to read a few excerpts right now.
All right.
Okay. If you are the man I take you to be, you will like to get this letter. If you are not, I don't care whether you like it or not, and only ask that you put it into the fire without reading any further. But I believe you will like it. I don't think there is a man living, even you, who are above the prejudices of the class of small-minded men, who would like to get a letter from a younger man, a stranger across the world. A man living in an atmosphere prejudiced to the truths you sing and your manner of singing them. You have shaken off the shackles, and your wings are free. I have the shackles on my shoulders still, but I have no wings. If you are going to read this letter any further, I should tell you that I am not prepared to give up all else, so far as words go. The only thing I'm prepared to give up is prejudice, and before I knew you, I had begun to throw overboard my cargo, but it is not all gone yet. I am writing to you, because you are different from other men. If you were the same as the mass, I would not write at all. If you would ever care to have more than you can imagine, for you have a great heart, how much pleasure it would be to me to write more to you. How sweet a thing it is for a strong, healthy man with a woman's eye and a child's wishes to feel that he can speak to a man who can be, if he wishes, father and brother and wife to his soul. Well, it seems like Bram Stoker may have used the horror genre as an outlet to explore the forbidden desires that he felt the need to repress in his own life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sensing an undercurrent here.
Mm-hmm. And that's just I just pulled a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the next one. Oscar Wilde.
My personal favorite.
Yeah, do I have to say any more? Gay guy, gay book.
I believe his last words, well, I'm sure these weren't actually his last words, but the story goes that he said either this wallpaper goes or I do.
Yes!
Or either these
the
curtains go or
the
I
drapes
do.
or the curtains, yeah. Uh-huh.
So he knew who he was and he lived it.
Heck yeah. The Picture of Dorian Gray was published in 1890, and it's a Gothic novel about an artist finding his muse in the beauty of another man.
Mm-hmm.
Said beautiful man wishes to never age, and the artistic rendition of him ages instead to grotesque results. Murder, betrayal, drama, stabbings. Oscar Wilde was imprisoned from 1895 to 1897 for homosexuality, after what's considered to be one of the first ever celebrity trials. So Wilde was much less repressed in his otherness than, say, possibly Bram Stoker, but it still fueled his foray into the horror genre.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've only got one more of these, fathers and mothers of horror people to go through. The last father of horror literature I want to talk about is Robert Louis Stevenson, who is the author of The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Stevenson suffered from medical issues that often left him bedbound, but he wrote prolifically in defiance of his disability. He wrote Jekyll and Hyde because of his fascination with the double lives that people lead. Stevenson himself has been described as strange-looking, quote-unquote, and eccentric, and he didn't fit well in with regular society. He actually spent a lot of time in the company of gay men, as friends, which scholars think influenced the story because of the double lives that his friends had to lead in order to protect themselves. So, these mothers and fathers of horror are just a few examples of how the genre has always been for and by people othered by society in one way or another. Mm-hmm. Through history, we'll see how horror movies have both lifted up the outsiders and often left them to die. Mm-hmm. Just look at the list of white people I went through just now. In America, we think of the originators of horror as very Eurocentric, which leaves out the majority of the literal world to be othered. On this note, my analysis today is from a mostly American lens. I know places in Japan great horror movies have been being made as long as they have been here. And also, like, horror stories and lore have been told for centuries in all different parts of the world. Like, maybe next year I'll do a more international horror analysis, but I'm only one woman, and I have limited time to make these outlines. So you're getting an American version.
Yes. We're doing our best.
Yes. So let's get into our analysis of horror movies, how they represent people for better or for worse, and how they represent the general and timely fears of society. Okay, the 1920s and 30s. So speaking of othering those who we find foreign or different, in the 1920s and 1930s, Universal Studios put out some of the most iconic movie monsters in history. But these monsters weren't just there to scare us. They were also meant to make us think. They forced us to explore our fear of the other. So the world was reeling after World War I, and films like Nosferatu and Dracula and White Zombie embodied that fear of the foreign, the looming, terrifying unknowns that the viewers faced every day going into the Great Depression. These films explored the clash of science and spirituality. Figures like Frankenstein's misunderstood monster invited viewers to contemplate the consequences and ethics of playing God and delving into the unknown in terms of like scientific experimentation. Entering the 30s, though, we saw a shift from the more gothic trends to films that explored exploitation of marginalized groups. Scholars agree that King Kong cannot be separated from the racism that black men experienced at the time of its release. Mm-hmm. We can't deny the racism of using a giant ape to represent the experiences of black men. And King Kong's fixation and predation on the white, blonde Anne Darrow, the pretty lady character, is a concept that's taken right out of the 1915 film Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation has been called one of the most reprehensibly racist films in Hollywood history.
Sure is.
And it largely contributed to the revival of the KKK in the 20th century. And though the film Back to King Kong, though King Kong's absolutely problematic in a lot of ways, King Kong himself is, like, at the heart of it all, he's a sympathetic character. He represents an anti-colonial mindset as he's trying to protect his land and his people from these violent white invaders who treat him like a monster. He's stolen from his home and taken prisoner in a foreign country, much like slaves had been as little as 70 to 80 years before its release. Another notable film in the 30s that is made about the experiences of marginalized people is 1932's Freaks, which is about the performers of a circus freak show, most of whom are physically disabled. Mm-hmm. So according to an article about disabilities in horror by Mids Meinberg, he says, the movie flips the assumptions of the audience at the time by having these performers be presented as people who are generally good, who find support in their community together and are willing to accept others within their number. The true villains of the film are abled, traditionally attractive people who seek to manipulate and harm the members of the troupe in order to gain access to the wealth that one of the performers came into. In her article for The Swaddle, Rohitha Naraharaseti said this about films shedding light on outsiders and outcasts. A return to the status quo was always the movie's end. The monstrous entities defeated, peace once again returning. In other words, the status quo was preferable and peaceful, and always under the shadow of something uncanny. While these fears are supposedly universal, it's only the already privileged for whom the upset of the status quo is the most frightening thing imaginable. For others, this upset is just what is needed. For many, the status quo was never peaceful, and it was in fact the horrific, the terrifying, and the abject.
Yep.
At this time, we even saw a lesbian vampire in 1936. I know, in the film Dracula's Daughter. The film didn't show the titular Dracula's daughter, Countess Salaska, in a sympathetic light, though.
Of course it not.
No.
Gotta remember the time period these were all set in.
Yep.
Very important context.
Yes. the homosexual themes of the film were presented as predatory and like a weakness. So even the tagline used to promote the film was "Save the women of London from Dracula's daughter."
Oh my god.
And because of the Hays Code, the lesbian relationships in the film are like more implied than shown outright. One member of the Production Code Association stated, "This will need very careful handling to avoid any questionable flavor." And they made the production crew completely change a couple of scenes to quote-unquote avoid any suggestion of perverse sexual desire.
So is the Hays Code like some sort of like regulation back then?
The Hays Code was about censorship,
Okay.
but it wasn't like a law. It was sort of like you were self-censoring in order to make sure your movie did well.
Yep. Gotcha.
So it wasn't against the law to put this stuff in. They just...
But you
did
get
it.
like slammed by the
kind of
critics or
like how
whatever.
on YouTube you have to say grape and
Yeah.
you can't talk about the pandemic.
Self-censorship,
And,
yeah, exactly. For the sake of being able to say what you want to say, basically?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which makes no sense. But anyway,
I know.
I mean, it does back then,
Yeah.
if you think about the context, yeah.
Well, I mean, we're basically still doing it today.
Yeah, right. I mean, yeah, in this specific...
But that,
Yeah.
And just a little bit more about the 20s and 30s. I can't talk about representation in these decades without mentioning James Whale. He is the director of Frankenstein, The Invisible Man, Old Dark House, and Bride of Frankenstein.
And, sorry, the Invisible Man is in the one where that person's actually invisible, not
Yes.
not the Invisible Man book that we had to read in high school, right? Okay.
No, the Invisible Monster.
Rodney,
yes.
whatever his name is. Yeah. He's in the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yeah. Yes, okay.
Oh my god, that movie. It was
Yeah.
Shane West.
Yes.
Woo! But James Whale was Universal Studios' like horror darling at the time. He was just churning out hits.
Yeah.
He was also a gay man, and he was out as like you could be in the 30s, and he didn't repress his sexuality like so many other people in this era. Plus, he gave us like the dope feminist icon, The Bride of Frankenstein, in 1935. So women had just won the right to vote in 1920. And had spent the next decades lobbying for things like equal pay and equal employment rights. And the Great Depression had also saw many women being forced out of the home to look for work to help out making ends meet, which gave them a bit more independence than they once had. Bride of Frankenstein comments on and rejects patriarchal control that she is expected to conform to. The bride is on the screen for under 5 minutes in the movie. But she uses her precious time to outright reject the life that's being pushed upon her. She screams in the face of her betrothed monster, which results in the monster destroying her and him in the lab and seemingly killing everybody because he's so upset. That's like, that's her whole scene. She's like, no, I will not. So these films, to quote from an article in Long Box of Darkness that didn't have an author listed, struck a chord with audiences battered by poverty and societal upheaval. They were grotesque, yet empathetic portraits of outcasts, reflecting the widespread feeling of being left on the outskirts during hard times. Yeah. So let's jump ahead a couple of years to 1945, saw the end of World War II. And the detonation of 2 atomic bombs in Japan, which inspired a slew of nuclear monster movies. The most famous, obviously, of these is Godzilla. The concept of gigantic, grotesque monsters destroying cities as a result of scientific experiments or radiation was seen in a lot of other movies. One notable one is Them! It's about giant ants. And they go like, wee, 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 wee. Their noise is really funny. Other notable films that touch on this fear are ones like The Fly and The Creature from the Black Lagoon that both feature body horror and science gone wrong. So we also continue to see our fear of the other and the foreign in films like Invasion of the Body Snatchers in 1965, which reflected the distrust of even your neighbors during the McCarthy-era Red Scare. We saw a lot of movies about literal alien invasions at this time, like The Blob and War of the Worlds.
Oh man, War of the Worlds. Did you know that, what's that, Orson Welles?
Yeah.
Wait, I don't remember who wrote War of the Worlds.
I think it was Orson Welles. Yeah.
Okay, but then somebody like read it on the radio,
And they
people
thought it was real.
Yeah, like a real alien invasion was happening.
That's so good.
Yeah.
So, gone were the sympathetic portrayals of outsiders from the 30s. Now the outsiders were a threat. And a threat to our very existence on Earth. And anybody could be one of them. This, psychological effects of the McCarthy era lingered throughout the late 50s and early 60s, too. We saw films like Rosemary's Baby find great success. These films suggested that anybody you see, your kind neighbors, even your spouse, could be plotting against you and making deals with the devil. Anybody you meet on the street could be a psycho. Which brings us to one of my favorite movies. Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 masterpiece, Psycho.
Oh boy.
Yes, there's a lot to say about Psycho, both good and bad. It's not a perfect movie. It is a product of its time, but, it's damn good.
Yeah, it sure is.
And I'll get this out of the way. Alfred Hitchcock was a creep. We know him. We don't like him. But you can't deny that he's one of the most influential directors in film history to this day. And Psycho is one of his best films. So I love this movie so much. I caught myself, I was writing a short synopsis, but I was literally just gushing and vomiting all these facts that are not relevant to today's discussion, and it was getting so long. So here's a quick synopsis that's not full of random facts. Did you know that Psycho is the first time that a toilet flushed on camera?
What?
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
And that Alfred Hitchcock in this movie did the first, where you would see in old movies people driving and you just saw the person. Psycho was the first movie where they showed Marion Crane, but then they also showed the road ahead of her so you could see where she was going, and it made it it up to the tenseness of it. Yeah, there's a lot of firsts and things. That's very interesting.
Really quick, so we're talking about his mastery of film, clearly doing
that's
lots
not
of firsts, but why is
that's
he...
not what we're supposed to be talking about, but that's okay.
yeah. But super quick,
just
I'm curious, and I just thought of this now instead of a minute ago when I should have asked, but I don't know anything about Alfred Hitchcock other than that he made these movies, so what, give me one thing that he's a known creep about. Or is there too many things?
Yeah. He was just he didn't treat women well.
Okay. That's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Got it. So, yeah. Okay. I mean, it makes sense.
He's a weirdo and a creep.
Yeah, and he looked mean, so.
Yeah.
He looks mean.
Okay. So, spoiler warning if you haven't found time in the last 65 years to watch Psycho.
Or even the Vince Vaughn version.
Yeah. It's pretty much shot for shot, except for the scene where Norman watches Marion in the bathroom. You have to, if you watch them side by side, you have to pause the black and white version so that Vince Vaughn can masturbate.
Ew.
For a couple minutes. Yep.
Great.
Everything else is the same.
Love that we had to add that in modern times.
Okay. Anyway, here's the synopsis. Marion Crane, who's played by Janet Leigh, who is actually the mother of another scream queen that we're going to get to later, steals money and goes on the run. She stays at the Bates Motel and meets Norman Bates, played by National Treasure Anthony Perkins, who also had a complicated relationship with his own sexuality. He lived as a gay man until his 30s, and then he got married and said he wasn't gay anymore.
Okay.
Yep. Norman argues with his mother, and Marion is stabbed in the shower 47 minutes into the movie. Cut to her sister and a private investigator come looking for her, and after some private investigating, they discover the big plot twist is that Norman murdered his mother a few years ago, and out of jealousy when she was dating a man that he became jealous of. And he's been playing her role now. So whenever he would feel attracted to a woman, the mother personality would come out and kill her.
Oh.
So let's dive into the commentary. Traditionally, up to this time period, the viewer of the film was treated as a masculine viewer. The female subjects in the movie were watched by the male gaze. They were objects. They were passive, sexualized, and punished for their sexuality. Marianne Crane falls into this pattern. Even her death is a 45-second whirlwind that mixes over 90 shots of female pain, her getting stabbed and screaming in pain, with male pleasure, a naked woman in the shower. Another legacy that Psycho has left behind, unfortunately, is trans representation in horror media. Norman Bates is one of the many horror icons that were inspired by Ed Gein, who allegedly made suits. He's a serial killer who, made lampshades and stuff out of people's skin. Disgusting stuff. But it's alleged that he made suits out of women's skin so that he could wear them, though this one particular fact has not been proven. A lot of other horrible things have been proven.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say that Ed Gein was not a horrific serial killer who skinned people.
Yeah.
So Norman is a character that plays with gender in a way that doesn't seem to reflect his own gender identity, and it doesn't reflect the experiences of transgendered people. At the end of the film, there's this long monologue, and it seems like the only reason it exists is to let the viewer know that Norman doesn't think he's a woman, and that he's not trans, even though they didn't have the word transgender back then. But that his personality is split into his and his mother's.
Right.
And now the mother has completely taken over and Norman is gone. And like I said before, this is one of my favorite movies for a lot of reasons. But I also acknowledge there's a huge ripple effect that started here in terms of harmful representation of trans people in horror. And the intermingling of gender and psychopathy in this movie has paved the way for problematic cross-dressing murderers for decades to come. Has this movie influenced the very fact that we see transphobic people equating transness with mental health issues in real life? Probably, a little bit.
Probably.
And speaking of mental health issues, I also want to comment on this film as a therapist. Dissociative identity disorder is what it's called when a person has different alters or different identities. And the disorder doesn't work the way it does in Psycho. It's a really big misrepresentation for disabled people. The film not only links transness with murder, but it links mental health issues and disabilities with murder. People with dissociative identity disorder are not violent, murderous people.
Right.
They're also not you're not going to have this crazy, switch of personalities in front of your face kind of thing.
Right.
It's just, it doesn't work like that. Anyway, another quote from Mids Meinberg in the article about horror and disability. For disabled people, horror can be an uncomfortable genre. It has a history of poor portrayals of disabled people as both monsters and victims. So I see Norman Bates as both the monster and the victim here, which is, I guess, what makes him such a a complex and compelling and enduring character.
Right. Exactly.
And props to Anthony Perkins for really bringing him to life.
Yeah.
So the last movie I want to talk about before we venture out of the 60s is George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead from 1968. This movie accidentally became a really poignant depiction of the experience of a black man in America at the time. It was released at the height of the civil rights movement. It came out 5 months after MLK, Martin Luther King Jr., was assassinated. And Romero insists he did not write the part for a black man, but that Dwayne Jones had the best audition for Ben, the protagonist of the movie. So the dead start to come back to life, intent on killing the living, and a small band of survivors get stranded in a little farmhouse and have to work together to survive.
Yep.
Ben is the only person of color in the group, and he bears general distrust from the rest of the group. It's never outright stated that it's because he's black, but you can, connect the dots.
Yeah.
It adds an extra layer. So the end of the movie is really where it hits home, is that he is the only person of the group that survives the night. He wakes up in the morning to the sound of gunshots, and he believes he's going to be saved because the sheriff's deputies have arrived, and they're taking down the dead. So he goes to walk toward them, and instead he's mistaken for a zombie as he walks toward them, and he's shot by this posse of armed white men. In a very very upsetting and impactful ending.
Mm-hmm.
And would this film have had such enduring staying power if a white actor had played Ben?
Huh.
I don't know.
Unintended consequences.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is often a theme.
Mm-hmm. But
like a good, but in my view, a good consequence.
Exactly.
Because it's forcing the audience to confront
to think, yep.
this
brings
dichotomy.
So much more meaning and so much more layer.
Mm-hmm. But if he's like, well, I didn't even think about it. He just had the best audition, so I cast him.
Romero does say, like, oh, it was better with him. You know, it made it more meaningful.
Totally.
But he was like, it was an accident. I didn't mean to.
Right. And then that's how it played out, which I don't know. That's like what art can do, I guess, in film.
But I'm going to kind of jump ahead and then jump back a little bit because I want to jump to the sequel, George A. Romero's 1978 Dawn of the Dead. Mm-hmm. The themes of racial inequality and police brutality were explored again. Yep. The film starts out during a police raid in a mostly black and Latino housing project. And the residents have been defying martial law and not turning their infected loved ones over to the National Guard. Mm-hmm. So attacks by racist officers induce chaos and cause the deaths of a lot of people in the building. And that's like the opening scene. Another main theme of this film tackles the rise of capitalism and mindless consumerism, which is cool. Mm-hmm. So after the events at the housing project, the majority of the rest of the movie takes place in a shopping mall. And the zombies kind of shuffle around to stores, and they kind of look like zoned out people shopping a little bit. Yeah. And one of the characters even says they came back to the mall because it was an important place for them when they were alive. Like that's where they wanted to go back.
Let me go shopping. Yeah. Let me go to the Limited too.
Right?
Not that existed back then, but Spencer's, right?
Spencer's Gifts. I need a blacklight poster stat. Okay, but let's back up a little bit. Because the 1970s had a lot of influential horror.
A lot of influential historical events.
Yep.
But I'm sure we're filtered through the horror. The horrors persist. Yep. So do we.
Exactly. So, okay. After the post-World War II prosperity of the 50s and 60s, horror movies were a way to deal with the brutalism of things like the Vietnam War and political scandals. Movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and The Last House on the Left held no punches with their like darkly realistic and incredibly violent storylines. In 1972, Blackula jump-started the Blaxploitation era of horror. These films were mostly black casts. They leaned into many harmful stereotypes. But at the same time, they provided representation to a large group of people who hadn't gotten to see themselves in horror movies before.
Really quick, I'm sorry.
No, yeah.
This made me think of something, why this stood out to me. Okay, I'm having a memory come up that has been buried for a long time. Okay. So, in high school, we had this Latin teacher named Mr. Woodbridge who everybody loved. Mm-hmm. But sometimes he just went off book, did not teach us Latin, because I think he was trying to teach us, like, everything in the world that he could think of.
Culture.
Through Latin. And we watched Blackula in his class. And he was, like, trying to explain exactly what you said. And, anyway, had nothing to do with Latin. But, well, maybe they say a Latin chant or something. Maybe that's how he backed into it. But he was like, I remember him being like, well, this is, and we were like, what? Because we were like 16. But anyway.
And it's very like, you know, there were a lot of sort of like that pimp sort of look, and like the women had the little shorts and like they were leading into stereotypes really heavily. But it's a double-edged sword because it also gave some representation. It wasn't perfect representation, but it was at least present. Yeah. It was somewhere to start from. Yep. So in the aftermath of the Vietnam War, the U.S. was terrorized by serial killers.
Interesting.
Yeah. Here's the long list of serial killers in the 70s. Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Son of Sam, Charles Manson, Jim Jones, the Hillside Strangler, the Zodiac Killer. There's probably more. But those are really famous ones. Yeah. So it's no surprise that the slasher film was born in this decade. Films like Silent Night, Bloody Night, and Black Christmas were followed by some of the most popular horror movies and franchises to this day. Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, and Halloween.
It's probably a whole other episode to discuss this, but, like, what a weird time frame. Like, why?
Well, I'm also, like, I think political, and, like, saying, like, the rise of political scandals, I think that things were just getting more coverage, like more news coverage. Yeah,
probably. And yes, because
people were just more aware.
Or not cable news, but like Walter Cronkite, like that became, everybody watched Walter Cronkite. So like, yeah, exactly. So as news coverage evolved and was able to cover more stuff, maybe this had always been happening, but we only know what became famous from it. I don't know. Yeah. Oh, weird.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So, the 70s slasher gifted us with the concept of the final girl. Diane Adams from Silent Night, Bloody Night, Jess Bradford from Black Christmas, and Sally Hardesty from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre were arguably the first final girls. But the ones that have made the most lasting impact on the culture and the ones that usually come to mind for most people are Laurie Strode from Halloween, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, daughter of Janet Leigh from Psycho.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And Ellen Ripley from Alien, played by Sigourney Weaver. So these two characters really set the mold for what the final girl trope was going to be going forward. The classic final girl is desexualized and masculinized. And more often than not only survives because she gets the help from a stronger man.
Of course.
So this pattern's like perfectly displayed in 1978's Halloween. Female victims are brutally murdered by Michael Myers when they have sex. Their naked bodies are just, like, on display for the male gaze. Laurie Strode survives because she's the only member of her group who's not sexually active in the film. And this is how she stands out from the other girls. She's not like the other girls.
She's not like them. She's not promiscuous.
Yeah. But she also, in the first film at least, can't take Michael Myers down herself. She needs a male psychologist to come shoot him so that she can run away. Right? I think so. I don't
know. Yeah, whatever.
I'm not a big slasher person, I've got to say.
Me and my sister watched, because on AMC they would have the marathon of Halloween movies, like all weekend leading up to Halloween, and we'd be like, she's a few years younger than me, so like 12 and 9, watching Michael Myers for like 24 hours straight.
I was in...
Loved it.
When was... I think it was in like January, February. I went to New Hampshire with my family to like a cute little town that was all wintry. And one night we just like stayed in our hotel room, like we went to our parents' hotel room, we played games. Yeah. But my dad and I were flipping through the channels before everyone else got there. And there was, like, Friday the 13th marathon. But it was, like, Friday the 13th, like, 5, 6, and 7 that we watched. And it was so ridiculous, but so fun. It's dumb as fuck.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But it is, like, very much, like, so many dead boobs.
Yeah, a lot of dead boobs. Like, which made me and my sister giggle, because we were little.
And it's,
what
like,
were our
I think
parents doing while we were watching this? I don't know.
I say this later on, but it's, like... The fear of female sexuality and the female body manifested in it getting violated and mutilated in these movies.
Right, exactly.
But anyway, okay. Ellen Ripley.
Yes.
Ellen Ripley strays a little bit from the classic final girl trope. She does not need to be saved by a man. In the end, it's just her and her cat up against the xenomorph. She has to use her own skill and her own level head to survive. There's also the fact that the villain of the film, the xenomorph, is a female. She's an alien mother, which is a cool little element. Alien actually has a lot to say about the experience of being a woman. In the beginning of the film, nobody expected Ellen Ripley to be the survivor. Sigourney, at the time, was a no-name actress. Right. And there were much bigger names than her male co-stars. Yep. So it was a shock to audiences when they were all killed off, and she was the last one standing. The famous chestburster scene, too, is also, like, a really unique and grotesque comment on childbirth and how scary it is to men. Yeah. Like, what if this happened to you?
Probably wouldn't handle it.
You couldn't handle it. Yeah. But anyway, so back to, like, the final girl, and the 1970s saw a huge amount of progress for women's rights. Women had just won the right to use contraception without government restriction in 1965. Roe versus Wade, R.I.P. Fuck.
R.I.P.
allowed for a woman's right to choose in 1973. And in 1974, women were finally allowed to apply for and have their own credit cards.
Imagine
1974.
Yep.
Women were finally gaining some autonomy and control over their bodies and their lives. So, the 1976 classic Carrie comments on this progress from
my favorite author,
very
Stephen
beginning.
King.
Yes.
Well, the book.
Yes.
He didn't direct the movie, I don't think, right? No.
I don't think so. I don't think he's ever directed.
I don't think
has he?
No, he just has random weird cameos.
Yeah.
In his movies.
And he has like weird favorites of his movies.
Yeah.
Like his
He's a
favorite
weird
is
guy.
like his favorite one is like a made-for-TV one that like was a huge flop. I can't remember which
All
one.
of his made-for-TV ones are huge flops. but there are huge flops, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think I have a bunch of them on DVD anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, so the very opening scene, Carrie is nude in the school locker room, surrounded by other nude girls, and gets her period for the first time.
Ooh.
She doesn't know what it is and is upset, understandably. But instead of helping her classmates mock her and traumatize her. They, like, throw tampons and stuff at her face. So, cut to at home, Carrie's mother is an abusive religious woman who makes Carrie think that she's a sinner for her natural womanhood, her natural girlhood. She represents the purity movement and the people who wanted to trample the progress that women had been making.
Yep.
In the end, the world's lack of understanding and care for Carrie turned her into a tragic monster.
Yep.
But through the lens of a man.
Right. A weird man.
Yes. The male perspective of the movie is a warning about allowing women to have too much power. But Carrie didn't see herself as a monster. She was just a victim of societal standards. So to quote Juliana Cropla in her presentation for Central Washington University, she became a monster to her monsters. It just goes to show the importance of sex ed.
Amen.
This all could have been avoided.
Yes, if only you could just teach the biological functions that everybody mostly experiences, and maybe this wouldn't have happened to all of Carrie's classmates.
Yep. R.I.P.
Yep.
R.I.P. to Carrie, too.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Another movie that comments on the male gaze on girls during puberty and the potential of women's power is The Exorcist. This film came out in 1973, and to this day, hordes of people still claim it as the scariest movie of all time. The awesome practical effects and the dread-inducing camera work definitely have a place in why the film still holds up so well. But the scariest part of The Exorcist is the corruption of innocence and the pushback to the traditional nuclear Christian family. To quote again Rohitha Narahara, in Reagan's possessed body, Western society saw what it feared about its own sweet 12-year-old girls. Their sexual purity being threatened by two things, the loss of faith and the absence of a father figure.
Oh, she didn't have a father in the
No.
movie? Okay. I don't
Subsequently, whatever happens to Reagan is an indirect result of the unthinkable consequences of eroding institutions like the nuclear family, Christianity, and the gender roles that accompany both.
Oh, man. Ripple effects today.
Yeah. So the fear of corruption and the accepted norms showed up many ways into the 80s, too. We had the Poltergeist in 1982 that represented the corruption of the suburban ideal and the unknown invading our safety and comfort. The same year, John Carpenter's remake of The Thing was a grotesque telling of the fears of far-right assimilation and the distrust of one's friends and neighbors. Coincidentally, a movie that came out 1 year into Reagan's presidency.
Ronald Reagan, not Reagan.
Not Reagan from The Exorcist. Can you imagine if Reagan from The Exorcist was president? It would have been better.
Yeah.
I mean, after the demon was gone.
Yeah.
In 1987, Hellraiser showed our fears of forbidden pleasure and sexual deviancy in a tale of grotesque body horror. Notably, Hellraiser was both written and directed by Clive Barker, a gay man, and has a lot of, kind of queer BDSM themes. All right. We also saw more examples of the harmful stereotype of transgender or cross-dressing murderers in films like 1980's Dressed to Kill and 1983's Sleepaway Camp. Both really problematic, but like a lot of like drag queens and stuff like still look to Dress to Kill as like fun like rep kind of for like cross-dressing and stuff,
like
even though it was super
reclaiming
problematic.
it a little bit,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know.
It's kind of like, it's very campy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, in the 80s and 90s, we saw both some progress and some backsliding when it came to black representation. There were a few notable harmful tropes that really found popularity at this time. So the trope of like the quote-unquote magical or sacrificial Negro was a popular one in predominantly white horror movies. In other movies too, but the basic idea of this trope is that black characters are used in a way that furthers the storyline of the white protagonists. It's essentially black characters serving their white counterparts. A very well-known example of this is 1980's The Shining, where Scatman Crothers' character Halloran, he's there basically for two reasons. One, to tell little white boy Danny about The Shining.
Yep.
And two, to be sacrificed so that Danny and his mother can escape to safety.
Yep.
The 80s and 90s is also when like the black character is first to die trope really got its wings. But alongside these harmful tropes, we did see some progress in horror when it came to the stories of black characters, like especially in the 90s. In 1992's Candyman, which was also a short story written by Clive Barker, we get to know the residents of the majority black projects of Cabrini Green in Chicago. So Candyman mixed supernatural horror with anxieties around race and generational trauma. Candyman still had a white protagonist, but it featured many black supporting characters, like Anne Marie McCoy, who was a single mother raising her son in the Cabrini Green projects. Its titular monster, Candyman, was a handsome and very suave black man. He was a supernatural killer, and he fell into the trope that goes all the way back to King Kong and Birth of a Nation of, a black man preying on a white woman. His story had a lot of nuance, though. We find out ultimately that Candyman was the son of a slave who fell in love with a white woman. And when she fell pregnant, he was killed by a lynch mob. And his body was burned where ultimately Cabrini Green would be built.
Oh.
So Candyman was inspired by the ideas of Malcolm X and the Black Power movement, because he was a victim, but he was also powerful.
Right.
Plus, even though he was a bad guy, he was just like so cool.
And why was he a bad guy? Because
he was killing people.
Well, no, I know, but like, what turned him? He was lynched by a lynch mob,
exactly.
Right?
Yes. Yeah. And he gave people sort of an anti-hero to look up to.
Right.
So until that, you've got Dwayne Jones in Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
But you didn't have so many really cool people to be like, oh, that guy kind of looks like me. He's cool.
Right.
Anyway, in 1995, Tales from the Hood revived the Blaxploitation horror genre for a new decade. The film tackled difficult subject matter like police brutality and the violent history between black and white people in America. It also critiques other societal issues like domestic violence against women and children. But it still kind of leaned into stereotypes at the time. In 1991, Silence of the Lambs delved into similar issues such as consent, workplace harassment, and gender. The storyline involves Jodie Foster's character Clarice being sexually harassed by multiple men at different times, some in her workplace. The film came out during the case of Meritor Savings Bank versus Vinson, which established that a hostile or abusive work environment can prove discrimination based on sex. So this granted women protections in the workplace against sexual harassment. Anita Hill, the woman involved in this case, was one of the first people to ever speak out about her experience with sexual harassment on TV.
Yep.
And just to note, Anita Hill was a black woman. And of course, Clarice was written as a white woman.
Yep.
But also, second note, Anita's alleged abuser is still a prominent Supreme Court justice to this day. And it's Clarence fucking Thomas.
Obviously.
Piece of shit.
It tracks. It tracks,
Yep.
guys.
Like, isn't it crazy how he is the antagonist in the case that got us sexual harassment protections, and he's still a Supreme Court justice.
I don't remember
The Supreme Court that's supposed to hand out justice to the people.
Right, and be impartial and, like, generally live up to the core values of society that are meant to lift everybody up. Yeah, that's unfortunate.
When I read that, like, I had a steaming moment.
Double entendre.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He's the worst.
Joe Biden had I don't remember what he said, but he was involved in some, like, during that hearing, whatever, his role as a senator, I don't know, he was not looked upon favorably. But I think he, like, admitted, like, I've evolved on this. That was my thinking back then, but...
with a career politician like Joe Biden, like, you have to evolve.
Oh, yeah. Well, you would think that this guy would evolve, too.
No,
this Supreme Court.
Clarence follows the money and nothing else.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, back to pieces of shit. We can't talk about Silence of the Lambs without bringing up Psycho's legacy of cross-dressing psychopathic murderers, because Buffalo Bill took the nod that Psycho made to Ed Gein and made it explicit.
Yep.
Buffalo Bill was out there killing women so he could wear their skin. We really don't see much good trans rep in horror till almost 2020. And it's small, too.
Yeah.
So 1990s also saw society, like, just kind of culturally becoming more self-aware. And, of course, that had to be reflected in our media, because in 1996, Wes Craven put out his masterpiece, Scream, which poked fun at all the well-known horror tropes at the time. Scream also featured multiple female characters, and these women weren't, like, the damsels in distress, like the Halloween era final girls.
Right.
They actually took on the more, like, kind of male hero role.
Yeah.
All right. Now, the turn of the new millennia. We're getting there, guys. America was shaken by the September 11th attacks. The collective trauma of this event caused our fears of invasion and domestic terrorism to skyrocket. We got films like The Strangers and Paranormal Activity, both which focus on home invasion, whether it's supernatural or human.
Yep.
And in the aftermath of 9/11, we watched what would be the beginning of a decades-long war in the Middle East. We saw the Bush administration support using torture in the war to quote-unquote get results.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney calling waterboarding, quote-unquote, just a dunk in the water. So many great people. A collective pessimism and a collective anxiety pervaded the U.S. It birthed the torture porn genre.
Beautiful.
We saw movies like Saw and Hostel make waves at the time. In her article for The Trail, Sky Sheehy stated, "The success and cultural impact of these franchises speak to the public's struggle to comprehend the horrors that their own governments were committing at home and abroad." Which, like, has only gotten worse.
Yep. Saw is one I don't think I can watch Saw. I can watch, like, a lot, but I can't watch Saw. I don't know.
The first Saw has a little more storyline than the rest of them, I feel. But you don't have to, it's very gratuitous. But it's got, like, it brought back the twist ending, which was so good.
I feel like I can rationalize a lot, like, everything we've talked about, but I don't know. It's just...
That was, like, but it's like, it was a turning point.
But maybe that's why, because I lived through 9/11, and this is what...
That we were in 7th grade. Yeah. Like, we were little kids.
And maybe it's too hard to see past that. I don't know. But...
And, like, this was the first war where we could get, like, 24/7 news coverage of it.
Yeah, maybe that impacted.
And there was probably torture happening in other wars,
obviously, from, like, the beginning of human time.
But now we knew about it.
Yes, and it's exactly. Yes, interesting.
And, like, how do we make sense of that? We make sense of it through horrifying visuals in our movies.
Yeah, exactly.
But 9/11 also caused, a rise in surveillance.
Yeah.
And we saw technology boom at the time. So found footage also became incredibly popular.
Yeah.
I mentioned Paranormal Activity, but other notable examples are obviously the Blair Witch Project, which people thought was real when it first came out. Kind of like War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, yeah.
Because their promotion was, like, they had a website.
It was like grassroots.
With testimonials.
Yeah,
And, like, nothing that said it was fake, that people thought it was a documentary.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was, like, very genius marketing, actually. Guerrilla marketing, that's what it was. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Cloverfield was another notable one, and like the shaky camera style of Cloverfield was directly inspired by videos people took on 9/11. Because it's like, I don't, is it in New York City or just a big anonymous city? But like, it's these people who are like at events, like filming things, and just happen to start seeing like this monster just crashes to Earth, and it's happenstance that they're already filming something else, and it's very much giving like 9/11. But so also at this time, like scientific breakthroughs, new innovative experiments caused the public to express fears around things like we had the Human Genome Project, stem cell research, cloning. Remember the sheep?
Yeah.
So 28 Days Later encapsulate those
Great
fears and
movie.
the potential risks. Also one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I like it better than Psycho. Potential risks of like nature clashing with science. I mean, the rage virus from the film originates because a group of environmental activists free a bunch of chimps from a lab that's abusing them and testing them. So this film revived the zombie genre. We saw a huge boom in movies featuring The Walking Dead, plus The Walking Dead the show.
One of my favorites, except now I don't care about it anymore.
So we saw the remake of Dawn of the Dead in 2004. We saw Resident Evil. We saw the zombie comedies Zombieland, Shaun of the Dead. I Am Legend, which directly commented on these like human experiments and the public's fear of what could come to them. Like Will Smith's character is a scientist that like had a hand in creating the virus or whatever. These like theirs are like vampire zombies in I Am Legend.
And, sorry, this is, I just thought of this, specific to The Walking Dead and zombie genre.
And I don't talk about The Walking Dead because
it's a show.
I didn't delve into TV.
Yeah,
that would have been
totally.
too much.
And it is too much, and you can, maybe this is too much.
No,
but
I love The Walking Dead,
I
so
want
let's talk
to
about
comment on the fact that, yes, it's a zombie show and based on a zombie, graphic novel, but ultimately it is a show about humanity and finding humanity,
like Stranger
when
Things.
It feels like it's gone.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think you
what
could say
human.
a lot about horror is that too.
Yeah, because like the harder the decisions that Rick has to make, it's like, are you becoming less human?
The Walking Dead. Who is The Walking Dead? The zombies or the people?
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Had to share that
I love a good zombie.
insight.
All right.
Revelation.
The last film of the early aughts I want to talk about is 2009's Jennifer's Body. Have you ever seen it?
No, but I know of it.
Yeah. So this film originally flopped in the box office, but since then it's garnered a huge feminist cult following. Yep. Many people claiming that it was ahead of its time.
That happens. Things flop, and then it's like, wait, they were right about this whole time. Yeah.
It was both written and directed by women. And the movie utilizes the male gaze as a tool to critique the male gaze. And it spotlights how harmful the objectification of women is. So Megan Fox plays the titular Jennifer, which is superbly cast because at the time she was one of the most objectified women in Hollywood. So she plays a high schooler who goes to a concert with her best friend, and after the show, she's ritually sacrificed to Satan by the all-male band that she went to see in exchange for their fame. Okay. Normally, this would be a case of a woman being put to death for her promiscuity, which we've seen in horror movies time and time again. But, for so long in horror, women have been murdered, raped, tortured. Society's fear of the female body so often ended up in its mutilation.
Yep.
But Jennifer's Body turns this on its head. The sacrifice fails for these men because Jennifer's not a virgin.
Ooh.
So she transforms into a man-eating demon instead.
Nice.
So the movie's feminist themes are complex, too. She's fighting the patriarchy, but she's also a product of the patriarchy and is, like, fighting within its confines. At the end of the film, Jennifer and her best friend, Needy, who's played by Amanda Seyfried, end up turning on each other, with Needy ultimately killing Jennifer. Spoiler alert, sorry. And she kills Jennifer and the demon. So some critics have said that this is, like, anti-feminist, but it's really just a poignant comment on how the girls only turned on each other because of the men who put them in the situation in the first place. The men who sacrificed Jennifer. It reflects how our patriarchal society so often pits women against each other, rather than letting us coexist and support each other in solidarity.
Extrapolating, I would argue that is a lesson to apply to the 1% versus everybody else.
Absolutely.
And social media and pitting us all against one another so we don't notice them profiting off of our misery.
Don't look to your neighbor, look up.
Yes, exactly.
Class war, not culture war.
Amen.
Okay. Jennifer's body paved the way for modern horror films to comment on the issues modern-day women face. 2020's Invisible Man allows its female protagonists to be the subjects of the film without being the objects. So Elizabeth Moss's Cecilia is tormented by her abusive ex-partner, but ultimately he's not the greatest villain of the movie. The real baddie is the institutionalized distrust and blame of women survivors. The story's told from Cecilia's perspective, not her abusers, which is much different from older films like, say, The Shining. Another more recent movie that takes the classic horror tropes but puts them in a perspective, like in a woman's perspective, is 2022's Barbarian. The first 40 minutes of this film is a masterclass in building tension. Have you seen it?
Yes.
Okay.
It was so good.
So good. I'm not going to give a million spoilers for this one because I know it's newer. But the beginning of the movie is essentially a woman books an Airbnb in Detroit for a job interview that she's got coming up, but finds when she arrives that it's double booked, and there's already a man there who claims he also booked it. So most women are intimately acquainted with the kind of dread that something like this would induce. And there's a huge twist only about a third into the movie. And again, I'm not going to give you all the twists and turns.
Yep.
But the first act really sends home the point that, like, for women and femme-presenting people, horror doesn't have to come from a classic monster, like Dracula or the Wolfman. It can be a charming and friendly man you just met. Also, you have to give it to whoever decided to cast Bill Skarsgård as Keith, the charming man. Like, he just played Pennywise a few years earlier.
Yeah.
Like, way to up the dread factor. There's also this interesting juxtaposition of this smart and suspicious Tess, played by Georgina Campbell, alongside AJ, who's played by Justin Long, who's a womanizer and a Hollywood actor who was recently accused of rape by his co-star.
Yeah.
So the two of them eventually need to join forces to survive. And AJ's narrative is turned on his head as he goes from predator to prey. He's seen as a comedic character. He's not meant to be admired at all. He's not meant to be really taken seriously. When a character with all of his attributes could have easily been the main protagonist a couple of decades ago.
Yep. He's like a buffoon.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. But, like, he has all the qualifications that would have been the main character in the 70s, 60s, whatever, But women aren't the only group of people who are starting to get better representation in modern horror movies. In recent years, we've seen a slight uptick in horror movies featuring trans people who aren't psychopathic murderers. The first horror movie to ever feature a trans protagonist was a 2019 vampire movie called Bit. The first ever. 2019. There's also a slasher film that took place at a conversion camp recently that came out called They Slash Them. And what I've heard is that the best part of the movie is the title, and it's not very good.
Yeah, you know.
But hey.
Take some time. to
Also,
get
the 2022 remake of Hellraiser cast Jamie Clayton, a trans woman, to play Pinhead,
Oh,
which,
cool.
I mean, not the protagonist, the antagonist,
Yeah.
but still pretty cool. And she did a great job. But we can't talk about the progress in modern horror representation without talking about Jordan Peele.
Mm-hmm.
The king of it.
Yes.
In 2017, Jordan Peele shocked most people when he strayed from the comedy that he was known for and released the masterpiece of horror commentary, Get Out.
Yeah.
Though, like, if you ever watched any of the horror sketches on Key and Peele, you can't be that shocked because those are really good. They, like, you could tell he had a handle on the genre by those tiny little sketches. But Get Out is said to be the first film that defines black horror. Peele uses traditional horror themes to comment on the fears that black people face in today's American society. It terrifyingly illustrates how even liberal white people in the modern age can still oppress black people under the guise of admiration. Mm-hmm. Peele followed Get Out with Us in 2019 and Nope in 2022. And he established a new normal for black characters in horror. Mm-hmm. It used to be a triumph for a black character to just survive a horror movie. I remember the first time watching Deep Blue Sea, and I was delighted that LL Cool J survived to the end. I think they were originally going to kill him off, and then like audiences were mad about it.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, because his character rocked. Okay. So Peele has created smart, real, complex characters who have more meaning to them than just simple survival. Peele paved the way for other complex black horror stories to be told, like Talk to Me, which features a black protagonist, came out 2 years ago, something like that. And Nina DaCosta's modern adaptation of Candyman, which actually put black characters at the forefront of their own story, unlike the 1992 original with the white protagonist. Get Out inspired a wave of horror movies that were rooted in social commentary. There were films that subverted identities, like whiteness in Get Out, or masculinity in Barbarian. Movies have also started making comments on class and socioeconomic inequality.
Yep.
In 2020, Parasite, which was a Korean language film, won Best Picture at the Academy Awards, making it the first ever foreign language film to win that award. It was a genre-bending movie, so it wasn't only horror, but it was definitely horrific. It focused on the desperate aspiration for a better life, no matter what the cost, and when the politeness of wealth becomes malevolent.
Yeah.
Also, a side note, as I said in the beginning for this episode, I'm focusing on horror from like an American lens.
Right.
So that's why I haven't featured more of like the amazing, Asian horror films that are around. But Parasite found crazy success in America, so gotta mention it.
And what does that say about where American audiences are, that they're resonating with this film about trying to not be poor, like, and trying to get ahead and not just get by. That's a Zoran Mamdani line. And I remember our dear president, who was president at the time of the Academy Awards of 2020, being like, why didn't an American film win Best Picture? So, anyway. Bring it home.
Yep. So these days, we're looking for more from our horror movies.
Yep.
Allegorical horror is in. We see this in most of the well-performing horror movies these days. In The Babadook, the real monster is grief. In Hereditary, the real monster is inherited trauma.
Yep.
Midsummer, the real monster is toxic relationships and codependency. In The Substance, the real monster is society's impossible beauty standards inflicted on women. In Annihilation, the real monster is evolution and our identity within our environment. So I'm going to quote Rahita Naraharaseti again, because she had a lot of great quotes in her article. What can I say? That any of these films achieved the mainstream success they did isn't a fluke or a coincidence, but signals a shift in our greater political consciousness too. With the help of social justice movements turning the gaze back into society, horror films began to reflect our own darkness back to us, rather than seeking the scares from elsewhere. Still, blockbuster hits that had to do with religious possession remain a staple, with The Conjuring and Insidious franchises, both haunting stories of yore, and ultimately a conservative at their core. Even as evil itself has begun to change, these films serve as reactionary throwbacks to the misogyny that lies lurking in the depths of faith-based horror. But rather than being the mainstream, the success of these franchises can now be read as outliers, even loving homages to the old guard of horror, even as the landscape shifts. We've seen a lot of shifts in the horror genre since its beginnings. Usually those shifts coincide with societal changes, progress, or fear.
Backlash to progress.
Yeah, the reactions. Over the years, many people have gone from being objectified, mutilated, and turned into monsters out of fear of their identities to now being represented in meaningful ways. We still have a long way to go with representation in American horror movies, though. We often continue to leave entire groups of people out of these films. It's extremely rare to see a disabled character in a horror movie. Notably, 2016's Hush and 2018's A Quiet Place feature deaf protagonists, but there aren't many examples beyond that. People with mental health issues also continue to be vilified in horror, like in 2016's Split, where the antagonist is a murderous man with dissociative identity disorder, again, coming from the legacy of Psycho. Another group that's left out time and time again is Latinos. Latinos represent 26% of horror movie audiences, and culturally they have a wealth of horror stories and legends to tell. Latin American countries do release some bangers of horror movies, but American ones keep striking out. So an example of this is there was an American version of La Llorona and a Guatemalan version that came out within a couple of years from each other. And the American version features the titular La Llorona as an evil hag, whereas the Guatemalan version frames her as a victim of the violence of colonialism and is much more nuanced, and it's more true to the source material.
Yeah.
Also, as I mentioned before, there's so many incredible Asian horror movies out there, but it's still really rare to see an Asian protagonist in an American horror film. We also have a huge lack of Native American representation in American horror. We recently have had movies like Blood Quantum and Slashback that featured Native American protagonists. They took on zombies and aliens. But again, with like their wealth of generational legends and stories, why is it that we haven't seen more? Could it be colonialism and racism? Anyway, in conclusion, we've come a long way, but we still have a ways to go. And I wonder what horror films will be coming out in these next years, because it seems like we're living a horror movie every day. So there's a lot of material to choose from. On that note, I hope you've enjoyed my long-winded love letter to horror movies. I hope it wasn't like so jam-packed with movies that it was hard to follow.
No, I thought it was good, and I'm not familiar with all of them.
Okay.
So I
you were able to follow it?
I voiced where I thought maybe we could illustrate more things for people who might not be so into horror.
As I was writing this, I kept like thinking of like, oh, I gotta put that movie in there, and like seeing if I could throw it in, and eventually I had to stop. So if there's a movie that you're like, why didn't you include that? I probably thought about it, and I was like, there's too much.
Yeah.
So on that note, what are you making time for this week?
Well, as we record this the week before Halloween, I will be making time on Halloween for trick-or-treating, hopefully, but there's already a debate in my neighborhood Facebook group about it raining, and if we're going to have Halloween on Saturday. And you know what I say to that? No bad weather, only bad clothes.
Yeah. I remember going out once. My sister was a Jack-in-the-Box, and she had a big old cardboard box, and it got all rained on, but she still trudged along.
Yeah, so I don't think we're changing Halloween, but we'll see.
I am going to be taking a plane to go visit one of my best friends for Halloween weekend, so that'll be fun. Yeah.
That'll be fun. All right.
Thank you for listening, and until next time, stay scary.